Okay, so just wanted to take a moment and rate my favorite Final Space episodes. We're gonna start with Season 1, and just go over each episode and talk about it real quick. Let's go ahead and just get right into it. So first we got Episode 1. It's a great episode. It introduces like 6 characters in the first one, which is a lot. And it's very impressive how they give each one its own robust character to it without really doing much. Well, it's doing a lot, but it doesn't seem like it's doing much. It's very effortlessly how they introduce the characters. Like the way they get we first meet Avocado like face to face. That interaction with him and Gary is just one of my favorites. A big thing about this episode is definitely how much it emphasizes loneliness and how it affected Gary. Like, everybody's biggest critique about this show is that Gary is just so annoying, and that's what puts them off. But what they don't realize, like, if you were alone for 5 years, that makes you go kind of crazy. So of course you're going to be a little off and a little annoying, especially if you have to live with Kevin the whole time. Like, that would make anybody go crazy. Overall, I would give this episode... let's start out strong. I'm going to give it an A. I think that's fair. Alright, let's start with Episode 2. Another great one. They introduced 4 characters, so it's not as character heavy as the other one. But it does do a lot. The animation kind of dips in this episode. But like, I mean, it's the first time Olin ever made his own series. I remember when I first started driving, I was not that great. I crashed a couple cars before I got anywhere near as good as I am now. But yeah, there's just a lot of moving parts, and it takes practice, and I'm willing to overlook some of the animation dips when it comes to that. It's just the storytelling in the show does make up for it, in my opinion. But anyways, back to Episode 2. One of my favorite parts is just the winter saga and how that proliferates throughout the whole series, and starting just from this episode. It's just, it really throws you into the idea that you're just in this real situation, because Gary is just a very aloof character, doesn't really know what's going on around him, and something like this definitely like is the reality check, the smack in the face that he needs to really get into gear. Cool thing about this episode is that you see a lot of the characters that you see later on, like the Time Police character that they had, a little goofy looking guy, the dog looking character. He's in this, he's just in the background. Frankenfurter, he's going, Frankenhauser, what's his name? I don't know. But that's one of my favorite characters. Just really brings Clarence back down to reality. And he's actually like right there in the foreground. You can't even miss him. And there's just a lot of good Easter eggs when you go back and watch it in this episode. It's really, really great. Just adding a lot of backstory, so it's not really going too much, but yeah, it's one of the better episodes, I think. I think I'm gonna go ahead and... Was it as good as the first one? That's the question. Because I want to say it's better. I might put this on A, and I might take Episode 1 down to B. And I think that's fair, because I need to be fair with these episodes. I can't let my bias get in the way. Okay, starting with Episode 3, this is where it really gets trippy. It's one of my favorites. It has the Lazarus Trap, and that whole sequence just really hits you differently. It shows that this isn't just a comedy cartoon. It's not a comedy show. It has its dramatic points, and it has its epicness to it. So to really bring it back to the space opera aspect as opposed to just a comedy. That whole scene with Steve, the way he like grins evilly, it's just really gets under your skin, and it really breaks you out of that comedy aspect. And then seeing Mooncake as a gladiator, that scene just really sends chills down my spine, because you almost feel like you're in the mind-numbingness of it, where you drown out the audience cheers for you, and you just see all the gore that you're doing. It really does a lot to convey that emotion and that feeling to the audience. It really does a good job of what it does. But ultimately, like, the story of the episode just shows that Mooncake it proves to Gary that Mooncake is a powerful ally. They're just trying to hide Mooncake, thinking he's this precious little sensitive thing, when really he's like their strongest ally and the strongest out of all of them. So it was really like nothing really happened except just a realization. So I got a docket on that. I'm gonna put it at a B. Just, yeah, because some of the timing too with the episode is a little bit off. So I'll have to give it that. So this next episode is a very powerful episode. It starts with Gary saving Quinn, which is a very big thing, because it's like a shot in the million that this person that Gary was trying to talk to, and that's going to be a discussion for later about like the kind of character Gary is, and the fact that he's just solely fixated on a girl, and it's kind of creepy. We'll talk about that later when I actually go in depth in each episode, but for now, it's that 1 in a million shot that he did. This was the person that needed to be saved. I don't know, it starts out strong, and the fact that in the episode Gary gets so overbearing that Quinn just starts punching him in the face, trying to get him into reality, and it takes a couple punches. That's how locked in he is in his own delusions. Okay, I need to say this for the episode. Anyway, it is a good episode because they ended up getting hacked by the Infinity Guard. So they gotta go out and do this thing where they siphon the power from a star. And that whole radiation poisoning, or Gary trips off of radiation, and it's really awesome. It's a good episode. It really gets you, especially if like you did have a father figure. But even if you didn't, like, you know, it builds Gary's backstory, and it adds a little emotion to this whole universe, where it's not just, you know, let's make a cop-out. A lot of people say that Final Space was just ordered by TBS because they wanted a space show, because Adult Swim had Rick and Morty, and blah blah blah. I get that, but this is more than just a cheap knockoff of Rick and Morty. It really is its own show, and something like this really cements it. Whereas, like, you don't really get, I don't want to say you don't get invested with Rick and Morty, because you do, but like, I really feel you get more invested with these characters than anybody from Rick and Morty. Anyway, yeah, he has a nice trip. Kevin ends up saving the day, and it's amazing. Kevin actually gets his thing. I like it. But ultimately, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a C, because it's not one of the strongest episodes. It's just a good exposition episode, pretty much. No, that's a lie. It's just a basic sci-fi episode. And while it is laying backstory, it isn't living up to the other episodes, in my opinion. Alright, where are we on? Episode 5? This one I am gonna give it a good one. It is another trippy episode. It's especially the forest sequence in this one. I just gotta give a shout out to that butterfly. That whole butterfly sequence is amazing. It's one of my favorite. The way I was watching an interview with Olin about this episode, and how you're going from planet to planet. He wants this galaxy to feel really lived in. So by adding like all the different wildlife that would be in this forest, and how they prey on different creatures and stuff like that, it really, like, it adds to the story a lot, where it's not just what I was saying before, it's not just your run-of-the-mill space show that's trying to fill a time slot. It really thinks about what it's doing and how it's building its world, and it's really well done in this episode. Another thing I like is how Quinn's life just like falls apart in this episode, because she spent her entire life dedicated to the Infinity Guard, and now she's just confronted with the reality that they're evil. And it's a really powerful message, I think, for the audience. Ultimately, I'm gonna put this up and I'm gonna go ahead and give it an S tier. I think it is my favorite episode from season 1. Even though it has like the fighting, okay, I might not have to give it an S because there was some animation issues. The timing of the fight scene definitely suffered. I think because they put so much work into the forest scene. I don't know for sure, but like that sequence was really polished, whereas the shootout scene wasn't as polished. There's definitely a lot more hiccups in the timing. So I'm gonna bring it down to an A specifically for that. Otherwise, it's my favorite episode of the season. And if it comes down to it, I'll just move everything else down and give this an A. Give this an S. Okay, episode 6. This is a strong one. This is when they finally save little Kato, and Olin really shows that he's been honing his craft, and it really shows in this episode. Just how far he's come from the first episode, and definitely from like his balloon shop days. You just gotta respect Olin Rogers as a storyteller. Whether or not you like this show, you gotta give it to him. His storytelling has pretty much... It's pretty good, and it's only gonna get better as the seasons go on. Especially how they did Little Kato when they first had the reunion with Little Kato as just minds controlled by the Lord Commander. So that meeting with Gary and Avocado is really fun, and it's just really interesting. The fight scene doesn't have any like lag to it, like the past episodes where it has a little timing issues in the animation. This one was really smooth, really solid, and just really good timing in the especially when Mooncake and Kevin save the day. Just the way they like come around the corner and blast a beam and just goes into slow motion ties in really well with the music. It's one of the best episodes, and for a good reason. I'm not gonna spoil it here, but it is a very powerful episode. I think that is... I'm gonna have to give that an S, because it might not be my favorite, but it is the best episode in season 1. Facts over feelings. Whatever the saying is. Okay, episode 7. So obviously this is a very expository episode. It's a very sad episode because we just had a loss in the last one. Pretty much it just goes over live, like what the Titans are and what the backstory of the whole show is going to be about. And it fully introduces Nightwing. Pretty sure it's Nightwing. Nightfall, I'm stupid. Nightwing. I don't even watch Batman. So yeah, it's a really fun episode. And it really shows, like, even though Gary's sentence is finally up in this one, he's built a camaraderie with all these characters, and he's pretty much built a family with them, and that's a beautiful thing. That's really what the show is all about. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a B, just because it's kind of slow. It does build a lot of expository information, and it does it really well. Like the animation when they're talking about the Titans has its own feel, its own style, and it's really good. It just doesn't pack as much of a punch as the other ones, though. Alright, what are we on? Episode 8, yeah. So this is another trippy one, when they actually go and meet Bolo for the first time, even though he's sleeping. My favorite part, hands down, in this episode is when Gary's going through the Chamber of Doubt. Which, if I'm not mistaken, it's also something that happens in Season 3, when Ash goes into Bolo's mind. Because technically they are in Bolo's mind, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it is the Chamber of Doubt. And his journey through it, I think, speaks a lot to a lot of people, because you do go through a lot of self-doubt, and that keeps you from achieving a lot of your goals. And I really don't think a lot of us would be able to go through what Gary goes through in this one, because, I mean, that mustache, though. You gotta love that mustache. In all seriousness, I did want to mention something about that. Everybody complains about how Gary is such an annoying character, and the way he reacts to situations, it takes him out of the show. But if you think about it, Gary is the normal guy that isn't used to these kind of things. So if you're not used to something, you're gonna react pretty cringely to it in the first go-around. Same thing with, like, what I was saying about Olin Rogers making a show for the first time. It's gonna be awkward the first few episodes. But as you get your feet running on it, you pretty much, you get better, and you react better. And people didn't really give Gary a chance to actually get his bearings about what the fuck is going on, because he's doing some incredible things in this show, and not a lot of people give him enough credit. Overall, it is a sad episode. I didn't really have a dad growing up, so I can take it or leave it with his experience, but it's definitely a powerful episode. I still tear up every time I try and say how, when his dad says, just try your best, and if your best's not good enough, and it's good enough for me, that's what every kid needs to hear. And it's a very beautiful moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this up in A, and I will go ahead and, just to even it out, I'll go ahead and put episode 1 down into C. Now, to be honest, I'll go ahead and put episode 2, actually, because it does have a lot of animation problems. I'll go ahead and put that in D. And I'll keep episode 1 in B. How about that? Okay. Alright, episode 9. This is a strong one, because it finally reveals Tribor as the revolutionary leader, the leader of the resistance, and ultimately my favorite character. He was not my favorite character until this episode happened, and then he just became the best character. I don't write the rules, that's just how it happens. When they break into the Infinity Guard headquarters, it's a very fantastic sequence. They reveal Kevin just is a badass, and it's really hard to admit that he's a badass, but this episode cements it, and you can't really argue after this point. He's a freaking mecha suit. That's just incredible. And just a lot going on in this episode. Really showing, there's a sequence where Gary finds out the person he knocked down the first episode is still there. And it just shows, like, what a horrible thing Gary has done. And really, yeah, that you're not supposed to like Gary. I'm gonna say it, like, that's the whole point of Gary, is to not like him. And that does play in the later seasons. And it just sucks that a lot of people don't watch the show because of Gary. Because he's an instrumental part, because he's annoying. And it just pisses me off. Rawr. So obviously, I'm gonna put this episode up. I think I'll just go ahead and put it as a B. because there is also some timing issues. I'm gonna knock it down for that. Now, episode 10, on the other hand, I'm already gonna tell you that's gonna go up to S tier, because it is the ultimate culmination of what Olin Rogers was doing in this season, this season. He definitely showed everything that he learned throughout the past season and put everything he could into this one. All the timing, all like the good jokes. There was a lot of good jokes, especially the whole idea of using your light bolt engine as an attack. That just blew my mind. And another thing that really like drags you back down into reality is when he tells Gary that there is no next time, and it's just really, it really brings you to reality, and I really appreciate that in the show. The show just really knows what it's doing, I think. The whole fight with the Lord Commander and everything about that, the way it brings back to all the cold openers, the way they open, it's all leading up to this moment at the end of the series where the main character is just left floating in space alone again. It's a very powerful episode, and I will say I probably cried on this first. No, that's a lie. I'm gonna cut that out. I didn't cry. I definitely cried in the second and third seasons. This show is amazing. But this first season, you know, it's not their best season. It definitely has a lot to hope for, and I think that it delivers in the next seasons. It is, Final Space is just one of my favorite shows, and yeah, it's crazy what you're able to do with animation. Okay, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, go ahead and hit like, maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, because I'm eventually going to go into a breakdown of every Final Space episode, doing one video per episode. I'm probably going to do the same with Ball Masters too. It's just going to be, we're just going to have a fun time, and you should be subscribed so that you can see when the new videos come out. Alright, bye.